So the next render engine that we're going to look at, and we'll make a new composition, is the advanced. A bit strange. Advanced renderer. Click OK, and oops, just in our composition settings, we should have set that over in the render settings over here to advanced 3D. Now, this isn't new to the most recent After Effects. And with this renderer, we can actually bring in 3D models into our workspace, which is pretty exciting to natively do that. We have been able to do that with plugins and kind of software inside of After Effects, but now we can do it natively. Now, After Effects isn't a 3D application, or it has definitely some 3D capabilities, but we can't model or surface, so that needs to be done somewhere else, and looks like Adobe's tying that kind of Substance suite of 3D tools into After Effects and other applications, which I suppose is positive. But if you want to make your own models, you'll have to do that somewhere else and surface them somewhere else. But once you've done that, you can bring that material in here and light it and incorporate it with your other graphic design elements. So let's do that. I'm going to again create some things to work with here. We might have a solid object in the background, make that pinky, working with these pinky kind of tones. I'm going to change the composition background to something pinky as well. And we'll pop in some text. Been using this word. And what else could we put in the background? Well, before we do that, we might turn these elements 3D and position them in 3D space with a new camera. And rotate the camera around a bit. It looks pretty weird because those two 2D objects are sitting right on top of each other. So let's move them out. Separate them off a little bit. And in the advanced 3D renderer, we can also extrude like we did previously in the Cinema 4D model. So I can expand that. You'll notice already it looks different though. Already got that kind of fall off, light fall off. Bevel it like we did before. And maybe I can kern that out a little bit. Something like that. And under material options, we're going to cast shadow and accept shadow, so that's good. It's by default, that's nice. Now I wonder if it is casting a shadow onto this element here. Cast shadows on, yeah. Accept shadows is on. While we're here, we may as well look at our curvature options. We can definitely curve that 2D object. And let me just move these a bit closer and see if we can notice a shadow. Not at the moment, we'll get to that. We can definitely see this sort of fall off in light across the volume of the 3D object or extruded object. So we can import models now, and there's a couple of different types of models that we can import, but I've found that .obj are very useful and quite accessible. So I've got a couple of models that I've grabbed off Adobe stock, and there's quite a bit there that you can use, but there are other places across the internet for stock 3D models that are pre-surfaced, or indeed you could make your own and bring it into After Effects to do the animation. So I'm going to import a couple of those that I've downloaded from Adobe stock. So I'm going to go File, Import, and I'll navigate to my folder where I've kept them. And so when I download them from After Effects, from Adobe stock, it downloads a whole folder, and there's some material files and also a .obj file that are kind of related to each other. What we want to import is the .obj. Go open. All right, so, and that's actually imported the whole folder of material there, which is good. We don't have to think about it. And I'm going to add this rocket toy to my comp, and you can't see that because this little window's popped up here. This is the model settings dialog box, so we could rename this. I'm going to rename it to rocket. And I'm going to scale the object to the comp size. Click that, and then I'm going to go OK. You can see here we've got this rocket, and I can position it in space like so, and rotate it around, which is absolutely fantastic that we can do this in our graphics kind of editing space. Really find that kind of a pretty interesting and useful addition to After Effects. So combining models with other 2D and 3D elements. Let's do that again. I've got another one here, so I'll import file. We imported the rocket. This time we'll import the robot. Okay, that didn't seem to work. Try that again. It's looking better this time around. Bit of thinking. And pop the robot into our workspace. Rename it. And size it to the comp, because it looks to me like these models are like pretty high resolution and large in scale. So these models have their own transformation properties. So if I wanted to scale a model, I can definitely do that. I can rotate it, but I can also use my little 3D widgets in there. Now I think the kind of animation that you could do with these models in After Effects compared to, dedicated 3D animation tools like Blender would be much more limited. There's no doubt about that. But if you're familiar with After Effects, I think there's some real advantages using After Effects with 3D models. And right up there on the top of that list would be the ease of use. It's really easy to use. And definitely to be able to color up our compositions with these 3D elements is really fantastic. All right, so to animate these 3D models, like we can't animate the armatures of this robot for example, because it's all kind of one piece. But I imagine if we had like various components, we could do that. Rig up a kind of kind of set of models to make limbs move and so on. But at the moment, with the models themselves, we can really just move them around in space, rotate them. So for example, our robot, I'm going to rotate on the y-axis. Could set a keyframe and have him turn around like so. And maybe with the robot, we could, with the rocket, we could scale it down a little bit and change its position over time. And if I play that, we're getting a little bit of movement in our space. Now, I really want to just point out, to finish this off, how lighting works. It's a little bit different, or we have different lights that we can use. I'm going to move my elements a bit closer together, like so. We need to use a light called an environment light. So now that we're in this advanced 3D renderer, we have the option to use an environment light. So the spotlights don't work as previous. They don't cast shadows on these 3D elements, but an environment light does. And I'm just going to bring up the darkness, maybe the intensity a bit, and see what that does to our workspace. So you can see some really kind of quite realistic shadows here. And as I change the position of our elements there, you know, this really nice light fall off, which is really, really nice. If I go to the composition settings in the 3D renderer, we've got these options here. And these options refer to, and this is also in the previous renders that we've looked at, this is kind of setting the quality of the render. And the higher the quality of the render, the slower your computer is going to go and grind, but the better the kind of resolution of your render. So it'll be softer and less grainy and so on. So if you're having troubles rendering, you might want to pull that down, or if you want something really high end, you might want to increase that quality value and the smoothness value on your shadows. I'm going to click OK. I feel like this needs to be just a bit further back. And this needs to be not quite as close. So that's looking good. I will bring in we've got a camera here. I tend to put my camera and my lights to the top of a layer stack. Let's animate it like we've been doing previously. I'm going to animate the point of interest and the position. And let's set up our first shot. Kind of something like this. Zoom in a bit. And we'll go to the end of our 2 seconds. And just adjust that. Like so. So with the draft on, I'll just scrub through that and we can see what's changing. It looks good. Maybe we'll just add some an animator to the text there. Let's add a scale animator and drop the scale down a bit. And under the range selector, I'm going to put a keyframe for the offset of -100. And then right at the end here, will hit an offset of 100. So it's kind of going to move. It's going to go from large to small, back up to large. All right, and I'll turn off the draft, and we'll hit render, and we'll just have a look at how much time that's taking compared to the previous two renders. So significantly more time. We're only currently up to the 5 frames of our 50 frame composition. So yeah, bear in mind that if you do start to incorporate these techniques and these rendering spaces, you're going to be in for some significant rendering time if this is just 2 seconds that we're trying to render here. I might just pause the recording for a second while this renders, and we'll check it out. I'll come back in a sec. Okay, so we're back and we can see our render now. Really nice shadow fall off and the extraordinary movement of those models. That took about 5 minutes to render that 2-second sequence. So yeah, really quite labor intensive for the computer. So you definitely want to be utilizing the draft 3D while you're working, and make sure that you include a significant amount of time and an element of frustration towards the end of your project when you're actually doing your rendering. Okay, so that's our look at the 3 rendering engines, finishing off with the advanced 3D render engine that's new to Adobe After Effects 2024.